In the vastness of the galaxy, where only the most powerful ruled, the galactic elites stood unrivaled. Their control over countless worlds was absolute, enforced by an iron grip of technological superiority and ruthless governance. These elites were not just powerful, they were untouchable. But despite their immense reach, they always craved more. Fear was their most valuable tool, and so they sought to create the ultimate weapon to crush any rebellion, to instill terror so deep that no one would dare rise against them. Their scientists toiled for years, manipulating genetics and using forbidden technologies, until they finally created what they believed would be the apex of terror, a space lizard, engineered to be hideous beyond comprehension. It was large, grotesque, with scales that shimmered in unnatural colors and eyes that glowed in the darkness. Its very existence was meant to inspire horror. But, as it often happens with those who believe themselves gods, the galactic elites overlooked one crucial factor. The creature they had created, though monstrous in appearance, lacked the intelligence they deemed necessary for their purposes. It was strong, yes, and terrifying to look at, but it didn't have the tactical brilliance or cunning they had envisioned. In their arrogance, the elites only saw its ugliness and its perceived failure to meet their standards. And so, they discarded it, like a failed experiment. Without ceremony, the elites abandoned the space lizard on a remote, desolate planet, a place with no name, no significance, and no hope of escape. A wasteland covered in jagged rocks, treacherous ravines, and filled with predators that had never known mercy. It was a death sentence. The lizard, still young, barely understanding the world around it, was left alone. It didn't know why it had been discarded. It didn't know why it had been deemed unworthy. But it felt the sting of rejection in a way more profound than any creature should. Its creators had made it for one purpose, but they had robbed it of the chance to fulfill that purpose, leaving it with nothing but the instinct to survive. Days turned into weeks, and the lizard began to adapt to its harsh environment. It learned to navigate the barren terrain, avoiding the larger predators while preying on smaller creatures for sustenance. Hunger, pain, and loneliness became its constant companions. Each day was a fight for survival, but with each challenge, it grew stronger. Its muscles became more defined, its reflexes sharper, and its mind, once thought to be simple, began to evolve. What the galactic elites never anticipated was the adaptability of the creature they had made. Left to its own devices, the lizard's brain began to develop at a rate that defied all expectations. It wasn't just a brute force weapon anymore. It started to think. It started to understand. On the desolate planet, there were remnants of an ancient civilization long gone. Ruined structures, broken machines, and cryptic writings lay scattered across the landscape. At first, the lizard ignored these, focused only on survival. But as it grew more intelligent, it became curious. It explored the ruins, touching the strange symbols etched into stone, studying the decaying technology left behind. Slowly, piece by piece, it began to decipher the knowledge of this lost civilization. The more it learned, the more its understanding of the universe expanded. What had started as a simple creature designed to terrify was becoming something far more dangerous, a being of intelligence and power. It was evolving, far beyond what its creators had ever intended. Yet, even as it grew in knowledge and strength, the lizard couldn't forget the pain of its abandonment. The deep-seated anger it felt toward those who had created it only to throw it away simmered beneath the surface. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about proving that it wasn't a failure, that it wasn't the monster they had cast aside. But something unexpected happened during its time of isolation. Alongside its physical and mental growth, the lizard began to experience emotions it had never been designed to have. Compassion. Empathy. It found itself helping other creatures on the planet, small, helpless beings that, like it, were struggling to survive in the harsh environment. It protected them from larger predators, shared food with them, and in turn, they showed it a level of trust and connection that the galactic elites had never offered. This was something new. The elites had programmed it for brutality, but it was discovering the value of kindness. It began to understand that strength wasn't just about physical power, it was about using that power to protect and uplift others. The more it reflected on its creators, the more it realized how flawed they were. The galactic elites, in all their technological brilliance and power, lacked the very thing they had discarded in the lizard, a heart. They ruled through fear and control, but they could never truly connect with the beings they oppressed. The lizard, abandoned and left for dead, was now more connected to the life forms around it than the elites could ever be. Still, deep within, the lizard knew it had a larger destiny. Surviving on this desolate planet wasn't enough. The fire of rebellion was starting to burn within it. It wasn't just a creature built for destruction anymore, it had become something far more dangerous, a creature with purpose, with intelligence, and with a growing desire for justice. As the space lizard adapted to its harsh environment, the changes within it went beyond mere survival instincts. What began as a simple struggle for food and shelter transformed into something far more profound. With every day that passed, its intelligence grew. The once basic, animalistic thoughts it had were evolving, expanding into complex ideas. It started to think critically, to plan, and to learn from its surroundings in ways no one, not even its creators, could have predicted. At first, it was just small things, understanding how to trap its prey more efficiently, finding the best places to hide from the planet's larger predators. But soon, the lizard's mind began to question the very world around it. What was this place? How had it come to be here? These questions, once foreign to its instinct-driven mind, now consumed it. The ancient ruins scattered across the planet became the lizard's obsession. These remnants of a lost civilization had been left undisturbed for centuries, their knowledge forgotten by all who had once known it. To most, the symbols etched into the walls and the decayed machines would have been nothing more than relics of a forgotten time. But to the lizard, they became keys to understanding the universe. It spent hours every day exploring these ruins, touching the symbols, observing the intricate designs carved into stone, trying to piece together the mysteries of the long-dead race that had once thrived here. At first, progress was slow. The language was foreign, the technology unlike anything it had ever seen. But the lizard's mind was hungry for knowledge, and with time, it began to make sense of the cryptic texts. It wasn't just the knowledge of the past that the lizard uncovered. These ancient ruins held more than just historical information. They contained fragments of advanced technology, concepts far beyond what the galactic elites had ever imagined. As the lizard deciphered more of the ancient language, it learned to harness this forgotten technology, incorporating it into its understanding of the universe. The tools it found were crude, but they were a starting point, offering a glimpse into a level of science that even the elites hadn't achieved. As it learned, the lizard began to understand that it wasn't just a creature meant for brute force. It had been given more than just physical strength. Its mind was now its greatest asset. The galactic elites, in their arrogance, had never considered that the creature they deemed unintelligent could learn, adapt, and grow far beyond their expectations. They had discarded it, believing it was nothing more than an ugly, useless beast, but in their haste, they had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the potential for evolution. The lizard's growth wasn't just intellectual. Its body, too, was changing. The harsh conditions of the planet had pushed it to its physical limits, and it responded by becoming even stronger, faster, more resilient. Its scales, once a dull, grotesque color, now shimmered with a strange, iridescent glow, a sign of the changes happening within. Muscles rippled beneath its thick hide, and its reflexes became sharper than ever before. It was no longer the creature the galactic elites had abandoned. It was something more, something greater. But the most surprising change was not in the lizard's mind or body, it was in its heart. As it continued to explore the planet and interact with the other creatures living there, it began to develop an understanding of compassion. This was a concept that had never been part of its original design. It had been created as a weapon, a tool of fear, with no need for empathy or kindness. Yet here, in the desolation of an abandoned world, the lizard discovered the value of protecting others. It started with small acts, saving a smaller creature from a predator, sharing its food with those who couldn't fend for themselves. These were not the actions of a mindless beast. They were the actions of a being that was beginning to understand the connections between life forms, the importance of community, and the strength that came from standing together. The lizard had been abandoned by those who created it, but it had found a new purpose in protecting the weak and the vulnerable. This realization sparked something even more significant within the lizard. It wasn't enough to survive. It wasn't enough to simply grow stronger. It began to dream of something more: escape, freedom, revenge. For too long, it had been confined to this desolate planet, left to rot in isolation. But now, with its newfound knowledge and strength, the lizard knew that it was destined for more. It could feel the fire of rebellion starting to burn within it, a fire that would soon ignite into something far greater than the galactic elites could ever have anticipated. The lizard's mind raced with possibilities. It had learned so much from the ruins, but it knew there was still more to discover. If it could unlock the full potential of the ancient technology, perhaps it could find a way off the planet, a way to take its place among the stars. And once it was free, the galactic elites would no longer be untouchable. They had discarded it as a failure, but they would soon learn that their greatest mistake wasn't in creating the lizard, it was in underestimating what it could become. With each passing day, the lizard's determination grew. It wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about proving its creators wrong. The lizard had discovered a deeper sense of purpose. It had seen the suffering of the other creatures on the planet, and it knew that this suffering wasn't limited to this world. Across the galaxy, countless beings were oppressed, crushed under the heel of the galactic elite's regime. The lizard had been one of them, a victim of their arrogance, but no more. It was time to fight back. The lizard had evolved. It had become something greater than its creators had ever intended. And now, it was ready to take its place as a force of change, a force that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. With newfound knowledge and a growing sense of purpose, the space lizard knew that survival alone wasn't enough. It had unlocked secrets of a forgotten civilization and had evolved into something far beyond its creators' expectations. But now, it was time to act. The lizard had grown stronger, both mentally and physically, and its destiny lay beyond the desolate planet where it had been discarded. It needed to escape. The ruins it had studied weren't just relics. They contained ancient technology that, although rusted and broken, still held immense potential. The lizard worked tirelessly, piecing together scraps of old machinery, reactivating what little power remained in the long-forgotten devices. It wasn't easy. Days turned into weeks, and then into months, but eventually, through sheer determination, the lizard crafted a vessel, crude by galactic standards, but functional enough to take it off the planet. The moment of escape was monumental. The lizard, having spent its entire life on a hostile, barren world, now felt the cold, silent embrace of space. It set its course, guided by the maps and star charts it had uncovered in the ruins, and made its way toward the center of the galaxy, the heart of the galactic elite's empire. The journey was perilous, but the lizard was prepared. With each passing moment, its determination to confront those who had abandoned it grew stronger. As it traveled from system to system, the lizard encountered the very beings the galactic elites had oppressed for centuries. These were species that had been subjugated, crushed under the weight of the elites' greed and tyranny. Their planets had been stripped of resources, their cultures suppressed, their people enslaved. The lizard saw its own story reflected in these oppressed creatures, a creation deemed unworthy, discarded by those in power. But the lizard was no longer alone in its mission. As it traveled, it began to gather allies. At first, they were small in number, scattered rebels, individuals who had already begun to resist the galactic elite's rule in their own small ways. These rebels were hardened by years of suffering, but they lacked the unity and leadership to mount a serious challenge. The lizard, however, brought something they hadn't seen before, a symbol of hope. Here was a creature that had not only survived the elite's cruelty, but had grown stronger because of it. Word of the space lizard's actions began to spread across the galaxy. Tales of a creature engineered to be a mere tool of fear, now leading a rebellion against its creators, captured the imagination of oppressed species everywhere. Slowly but surely, the lizard's influence grew, and so did its forces. What had started as a handful of rebels soon became a movement, a coalition of the downtrodden and disenfranchised, united under a single cause: to overthrow the galactic elites. The elites, for the longest time, didn't take the growing rebellion seriously. They saw it as nothing more than a minor disturbance, easily crushed by their superior technology and military might. After all, they had dealt with rebellions before. To them, this was just another annoyance. But they hadn't accounted for the lizard. Unlike the fragmented resistance movements of the past, the lizard's rebellion was coordinated and strategic. It struck where the elites were weakest, exploiting vulnerabilities they hadn't even known existed. Small victories began to pile up, key supply lines disrupted, elite-controlled planets liberated, their fleets ambushed and destroyed in surprise attacks. What the galactic elites had considered a mere inconvenience was quickly turning into a serious threat. As the rebellion gained momentum, the lizard continued to evolve. It had always been intelligent, but now it was becoming a true leader. It no longer fought just for revenge, it fought for justice. It had seen the suffering across the galaxy, and it was determined to end the reign of the elites, not just for itself, but for all the oppressed beings under their control. The elites, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, began to panic. Their spies brought back reports of entire planets rising up against them, inspired by the lizard's leadership. They dispatched fleets to crush the rebellion, but time and time again, they were outmaneuvered. The lizard had learned not only from the ruins of the ancient civilization it had studied, but also from the mistakes of its enemies. It knew their tactics, their weaknesses, and it exploited them at every turn. The lizard's coalition was no longer just a band of rebels, it was an army. And with each victory, more species joined the cause. The galactic elites had ruled for centuries through fear, but now, that fear was turning against them. Their own people began to question their authority, as rumors of the lizard's success spread even to the core worlds of the Empire. What made the lizard's rebellion so dangerous to the elites wasn't just its growing military strength, it was the message it carried. The galactic elites had always relied on the belief that they were untouchable, that no one could ever challenge their rule. But now, that belief was shattered. The lizard's rise had proven that the elites were not invincible. If a creature they had discarded as worthless could challenge them, then anyone could. The final blow came when the lizard's forces launched a daring assault on one of the elites' most heavily fortified strongholds. It was a battle the galactic elites believed they couldn't lose, a show of force meant to crush the rebellion once and for all. But the lizard had learned too much, evolved too far, to be defeated so easily. Using the advanced technology it had uncovered from the ancient ruins, combined with the knowledge it had gained from its many battles, the lizard led its forces to victory. The shockwaves from that victory reverberated across the galaxy. The galactic elites, who had ruled with absolute power for generations, now found themselves on the defensive, their empire crumbling before their eyes. The lizard, once abandoned and forgotten, had become the leader of a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. In the end, it wasn't just the elites' fleets or their armies that were defeated, it was their belief in their own superiority. The lizard had proven that strength didn't come from appearances or from genetic engineering, but from resilience, intelligence, and the will to fight for what was right. The victory over the galactic elite's stronghold sent a clear message: their reign was no longer absolute. The lizard had achieved what many thought impossible, turning the galaxy's most feared rulers into the ones now gripped by fear. But this was only the beginning. The elites, while shaken, were not defeated yet. They still held immense power, and they were determined to reclaim control at any cost. What they didn't realize was that the momentum had shifted entirely out of their hands. The lizard, now seen as the figurehead of the rebellion, understood that a final confrontation was inevitable. Its intelligence had grown to a level that rivaled, and in many ways surpassed, that of the galactic elites. It no longer acted on instinct alone but on careful, calculated strategy. Every move it made was deliberate, every plan intricately detailed to dismantle the elites' empire piece by piece. The galactic elites, desperate to maintain their crumbling grip on power, began to consolidate their forces. They called upon their most loyal commanders, fortified their last remaining strongholds, and unleashed devastating weapons in a bid to intimidate the growing rebellion. But it was too late. The galaxy had tasted the possibility of freedom, and the elites could no longer control the narrative. The lizard's forces, now vast and diverse, continued to grow. Species from across the galaxy, once divided by centuries of oppression, united under the banner of the rebellion. What had started as a small resistance movement had transformed into a full-scale galactic revolution. The lizard, once seen as an insignificant creature, was now revered as a liberator. Its vision had become the hope of billions, and that hope was more powerful than any weapon the elites could wield. As the elites prepared for their final stand, the lizard made one last move that would solidify its place in galactic history. It had always understood that winning the war wasn't just about military strength, it was about breaking the psychological hold the elites had over the galaxy. To achieve this, it needed to confront the elites directly, to show the galaxy that even the most powerful rulers could be brought to their knees. The lizard's forces launched a coordinated attack on the elites' capital, a planet long thought to be impenetrable. The elites, in their arrogance, believed their defenses would hold. They had constructed massive fortresses, equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy, and surrounded themselves with legions of loyal soldiers. But none of that could stop the inevitable. The lizard, using the knowledge it had gathered from the ancient ruins, outmaneuvered the elites at every turn. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Fleets clashed in space, while on the ground, the lizard's forces stormed the elites' strongholds. The elites threw everything they had at the rebels, but their desperation was clear. For the first time in centuries, they were no longer in control. And at the center of it all was the lizard, leading the charge. What truly shocked the galaxy wasn't the sheer scale of the battle or the destruction that followed. It was the way the lizard approached the final moments of the conflict. When the last of the elites' defenses fell, and the heart of their empire lay exposed, the lizard didn't order their execution. It didn't seek vengeance. Instead, it showed mercy. The galactic elites, having lost everything, were brought before the lizard. They had expected cruelty, the same kind they had shown to the millions they had oppressed over the centuries. But what they received was compassion, something they had never given to anyone, least of all the creature they had abandoned so long ago. The lizard's decision not to destroy the elites was more powerful than any act of violence could have been. It sent a message to the entire galaxy that this revolution wasn't about replacing one tyrant with another. It was about creating something new, something better. The elites were stripped of their power, their empire dismantled, but their lives were spared. They would live to see the new galaxy that rose from the ashes of their reign, and that was a punishment far worse than death. As news of the elites' defeat spread across the galaxy, celebrations erupted on every planet. The beings who had lived in fear for so long could now finally breathe free. The lizard, once discarded as a failed experiment, had become the galaxy's greatest hero. Its name would be spoken in awe for generations to come. But the lizard wasn't interested in glory or recognition. It understood that its role in the galaxy was far from over. With the elites defeated, there was still much work to be done. The galaxy, fractured by years of oppression, needed rebuilding. Species that had once been at odds with each other needed to learn how to live in harmony. And the lizard, with its intelligence, strength, and compassion, was the one who would lead them through this new era. The lizard's journey had come full circle. From a creature abandoned and left for dead, it had risen to become a symbol of hope, resilience, and justice. It had shown the galaxy that no being, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem, could be underestimated. The elites had believed that power came from fear, but the lizard had proven that true power came from unity, from compassion, and from the will to fight for what was right. In the aftermath of the rebellion, the galaxy entered a new age of peace and cooperation. The lizard, while still revered as a hero, quietly stepped back from the spotlight. It had never sought to rule, it had only wanted to create a better world for those who had suffered under the elite's tyranny. And in that, it had succeeded. The galactic elites were no more. Their empire, once thought to be eternal, had crumbled. But what remained was a galaxy filled with hope, A galaxy that had been shocked not just by the fall of its rulers, but by the rise of a creature they had discarded as worthless. And so, the lizard's legacy lived on, not as a tale of revenge, but as a story of redemption, of courage, and of the undeniable truth that even the most unlikely of heroes can change the course of history. The universe would never forget what the lizard had done, and its actions would inspire generations to come. The galaxy had been forever changed, and in the end, it wasn't just the elites who were shocked, it was the universe itself.